don't want to mispronounce your last name.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, Madeline, thank you for joining us. Please proceed.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. I don't know if you can see me. I'm riding my bike at the moment. And I'm one of the 600 people that signed on to the petition that candidate Robin Yee for City Council District 3 put out. And I never really heard of the Portland Clean Energy Fund. I've lived here for 2 years. This is going to be my first time voting in this election. And so this has been brought to my attention. I'm pretty active with the DSA Eco-Socialist Working Group and 350 PDX. And they've all alerted me to these issues happening here. And I will say that there's plenty of nonprofits, environmental nonprofits that are willing to work with Portland Clean Energy Fund to find ways to allocate the extra money that is currently at disposal or at question. And one of the campaigns that I'm personally working on with the DSA is a free, fair, and a fairless transit campaign. Sorry, I apologize. There's a train coming. I'll keep it short, but I want to keep in contact.
Madeline, we can't hear you right now. You're not, you're muted. Madeline, you're still, oh, I see. You're muted while the train is going by. Okay.
Okay, sorry, I was pretty much wrapped up there. I just wanted to say that I'm active in the environmental justice nonprofits that are in Portland. And I know that there's plenty of ways we can work with the Portland Clean Energy Fund to allocate the resources that y'all have. I want to provide my information as a liaison to those suggestions. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I saw that there was a hand raised. There wasn't a name, so I'll repeat the first few digits of the phone number, 971-997. If you do want to share public comment, please come off mute and share your name with us. Again, that's 971-997, the first 6 digits.
Hi.
All right. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm in a basement.
Can you share your first and last name, please?
Joseph Herbert.
Thank you. Go ahead, Joseph.
Thank you. I really, first of all, thank you, committee members and facilitators and staff. I really appreciate everyone. I wanted to say that 2 things. One is I've found out, much to my horror, in recent years, that real estate development companies have been totally in bed with fossil fuel and energy companies for decades. That the shareholders, the executive boards are on one another's boards of directors. They have worked long and hard with armies of lobbyists to prevent and weaken good insulation and energy efficiency standards across the US and elsewhere. So that's point number 1. Point number 2 is buildings that have been built, multifamily apartment buildings in the Portland area in the last 5 years do not seem to have overhangs to block out the sun during the hottest parts of the year. So that's crazy that you have south-facing windows, without any overhangs that are calculated to let in sunlight most of the year, but block it during the summer. It is impossible to survive in those buildings, according to multiple reviews from residents, without an air conditioner during the summer.
Joseph, you're 30 seconds over time, and I'm not trying to be rude. We're just trying to really stick to 2 minutes each. If you could finish your sentence, and then we need to move on to the next public member.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to see passive house, North America passive house standards as mandatory for any and all construction of residential buildings which use PCEF dollars. That means a home energy score of 10 out of 10 or better. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Tyler Gilmore. Moving on to Alex Wick. Natalie Paravicini.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm calling on behalf of myself and the Pacific Green Party, and I want to thank you first for the invitation to speak. I am very concerned about funds that we voted for the PCEF might be diverted to projects that are not related to PCEF, and so we have a set of requests for any allocation of additional funding or excess funding. And the first one is to decrease barriers for community generated ideas and programs, so that if people or organizations have ideas, that there should be an easy process to propose those. I support what the earlier commenter mentioned about making our buildings and our infrastructure more climate resilient. That's something that the United States is sorely lacking behind, and that's where we have the PCEF come into play. Also, one of the criticism is that there is not enough capacity to implement projects within the committee, and I think that funding should be allocated so that you can increase capacity to implement and review those funds. The other thing is that if external public agencies want to receive funding from the PCEF fund, that they need to apply and have the same process as any external or other providers or partners or nonprofit providers have, and no special preferential treatment. I think that there was a very specific reason for us to vote for the PCEF. One of them is environmental resilience, and there is a gazillion projects that could be implemented. And the second one is for a social justice, environmental justice, and to allocate those funds to communities that have been so far exploited or really sidelined in many of these processes and are the first or the worst affected. And that's what the fund needs to be. No rating of the fund for additional external projects. If the city has other projects or other people have other projects, they need to levy their own funding, not funding that we have voted to allocate very specifically for very specific reasons. So those are basically my comments. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than glad to reply.
Thank you, Natalie. We'll move on to Lenny D.
Hi, thanks. I've been involved with PCEF since 2015. During the campaign, I led the coalition building part of it that got to over 150 community organizations to endorse it. Building coalitions is very difficult and very time consuming. This is another one of those pivotal moments that PCEF has faced all these years. And I applaud what you've done in terms of laying out a decent proposal for how to go forward with large projects, which I think are crucial to getting the public behind what PCEF is doing and showing what PCEF can do. I am a little concerned about the possibility that there may be barriers to large organizations that would want to take advantage of this opportunity, as we're offering grants from $20 million to up to $100 million. For example, if one of the East Portland school districts wanted to apply, they might have a lot of difficulty in getting up to speed with all that's required in terms of community engagement. So I would urge you to have a little caution about this round, given the time problem, because time is not on our side, and we need to come up with very visible, very large projects that show the public what PCEF can do, because we're facing serious opposition from right-wing sources. So I encourage you to consider that. Thank you much for all that you're doing. Take care.
Thank you, Lenny. Next is Babs Vanelli.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Babs. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Well, actually, most of the people who have gone before me have covered anything I might have said, or some things I hadn't even thought about saying. But specifically, Professor Megan, when she talked, she covered the things that were of most concern for me. The bottom line is, and you all know this, and I've supported you through this whole process, your tireless hours of work. The PCEF money needs to go for what it was intended, climate and energy projects, period. And any other convoluted ways that people might try and get their mitts on it, like some of the shenanigans behind the scenes with Rubio and Gonzalez, you have stuck to your guns. The PCEF funds we voted on for a very specific reason. So thank you again for all you're doing. I'm cautiously optimistic as we have a expanded city council and a new mayor, and just don't give up. Just don't give up. We are supporting you. Thank you.
Thank you, Babs. Jason Skipton.
Hey everyone. Again, my name is Jason Skipton. I use he, him pronouns. I'm honored to work with a community-based organization called Growing Gardens as its executive director. I've been able to work in community-led regenerative agriculture projects for the past 14 years. And I'm also part of a coalition with 20 different organizations that represent thousands of Portlanders, most of which are disproportionately negatively impacted by climate change. And these all represent PCEF priority populations. So we've talked about coalitions, right? Lenny talked about it. Professor Megan talked about it. So we're a part of the Regen Ag Coalition. We represent about $80 million in annual budgets and represent about 500 employees. We have organizations with 10, 20, 30, and nearly 50 years of experience who have led and dispersed millions of dollars through their own structures and community-led processes over many years. We have built connections and collaborations through hands in the dirt partnerships. Unfortunately, we as a nonprofit sector have been historically underfunded, and precisely the reason why PCEF led to supporting nonprofits to shift this negative narrative. To not increase funding to nonprofits perpetuates the unfortunate narrative that we should continue to be underfunded and do more with less. You've all heard me talk about a couple of things over these last several meetings. Some things for tonight to consider, right? Fund our local food system through the Regen Ag Coalition. This has never been funded before. There isn't a bureau that we can go to talk about food system work. We need to think about this as a delicate ecosystem that needs increased and continued funding, just like a tree. We need support, we need more work and more funding. We are a strong coalition with decades of proven experience in community work. We're also asking to increase funding for grants already in RFP 3 that are under review right now that have the potential to have direct impact now through an already existing RFP project. Also increase Regen Ag general operating funding from a cap that's at $100,000 a year to $500,000 a year to again support this work. A couple of meetings ago, PCEF committee member Michael asked this question, like, we haven't asked nonprofits, are they struggling financially? We've heard from city bureaus that they are. Well, Michael, the answer is yes. Nonprofits are struggling right now. Nonprofits are looking at closing doors right now, but we don't have a financial lifeline to reach out to talk about what can we do to shore up our budgets. This is where this conversation comes in, right? Like we think about how to
Jason?
support regenerative
Jason,
ag.
Jason, excuse me for interrupting. Your 30 seconds over time. If you could please wrap up your comments.
Will do. I just have one question. Have you all eaten today? This is your food system at work. You think this choice is easy? Invest in our local food system and regenerative agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Judy Wilder.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Judy, we can hear you.
I'm a Portland resident, an old Girl Scout, a retired juvenile justice worker, and great-grandmother. When I first heard about the proposal for a referendum to facilitate development of renewable energy transition in the community to include low-income neighborhoods, I didn't think it had a prayer. Thank you for your time and interest in hearing public comment. Citizens approved that referendum with 60-some%. We citizens are watching and urge you to support every dollar of PCEF toward climate clean energy. Support a fair PCEF committee process that requires public agencies to be as thorough as external nonprofit partners when those agencies request to apply for PCEF funds. Support PCEF to reduce barriers for community-generated ideas and programs. Support the ongoing need to grow staffing and capacity for PCEF program to counter the self-defeating critique that PCEF cannot implement larger project revenues because of low capacity. Support a community-driven process when revenues go below or beyond revenue projections. I urge you to assure that what the voters approved in 2018, a Portland Clean Energy Fund to help the transition to renewable energy, especially in those areas where the people are paying the highest costs for our climate crisis. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. What I want to do is go back to the top of my list and just make sure if on the names I called, if anyone is here. Harlan Schober, Tim Pitts, Tyler Gilmore, and Alex Wick. All right, I don't hear from any of those individuals. At this time, I would just like a couple of committee members to share some comments. Any committee members who would like to respond to public comment? Now, I do see a hand up from Darlene. Darlene, would you like to share public comment?
If I can, yes.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, thank you. My name is Darlene Sherman. I represent the Great Old Broads for Wilderness, and have been following the PCEF project process, and we really appreciate that with additional funding, that it's good to expand the scope of and size of projects, but maintain the energy efficiency, renewable energy, and the equity lens. I would especially like the committee to look at transportation. In the first round, there were maybe 5% of the funds went to transportation, although it's something like 42% of Portland greenhouse gas emissions. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your trying to hold the line and follow the intent of PCEF. Thank you.
Thank you, Darlene. All right, I don't see any more hands. So again, if there are a couple of committee members that would like to respond to some of the comments made. Oh, I see, Darrell, is your hand raised for public comment? You're on mute?
All right, here we go. Can you hear me?
I can. Are you, do you want to
Yes,
give
ma'am.
public comment? Okay, go ahead, please.
So I'm Darrell Javon Kinsey Bay. Some of you know me as a mayoral candidate for Portland, Oregon. But I'm the co-founder of the BIPOC Rise Mahing Center. And I feel that it's very important for us to strive to not pay lip service to this very dire situation. The community has now had an opportunity to change generations and add value to our youth's posterity. And so we should, really take these opportunities to recognize that we are at a turning point in our country. And Portland is being watched by everyone in the whole entire world. And we should recognize that we have a lot of value to bring to this table, even though there's less than 50 people here. And keep in mind, there was a man named Mao Zedong who built a huge, massive corporation today now known as the Democratic Republic of China. And it started with about 7 people. So I just say that to encourage everyone and empower them that we do have a great opportunity. We got to keep moving forward, keep pushing. And we're going to come out in the end because it's just an inevitable adjustment that's being made for those who have versus those who have not. So just want to encourage everyone and to uplift them because we have the power in our hands and we're not stopping. So thank you everyone for putting everything together. Tracy Smith and Sam Barrasso, good to see you again, Sam. And keep up the good work, y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Darrell. Megan.
Yeah. Hi, fellow committee members. I was waiting to see, Rampees and I both got to speak already. So if one of you wants to talk, I know we normally do, but Rampees and I got to speak already. So I'm hoping one of you, and I'll just say briefly, thank you for the public comment. I mean, I hear a lot of the same things we saw in writing, which is protect PCEF to the best you can, use it for what voters passed it for, prioritize community, and that there's a lot of great projects out there. And I hear all that and I'm taking it to heart.
Thank you, Megan. All right, we'll move over now to general program update. So looking at RFP number 3, getting an update on the review process, staff recruitment, and the continued and ongoing work for set 1 allocations recommended on February 2nd. Sam? Sam, we can't hear you. I see you're talking, but we can't hear you.
You should hear me now. Thank you all, and thank you everyone for taking their time out of their evenings. Just appreciate hearing from folks. I'll be quick here, but I think what I wanted to just give you all is a quick update on where we are on a few things. One, we continue to work on RFP 3, which closed in mid-February, and so we are now just wrapping up the technical review phase of the project and have gone through the eligibility phase. We have trainings scheduled with our external panel participants next week, and our full scoring will begin on April 1st with our scoring panel meetings in May. So we had pretty heavy deadlines for the vast majority of our staff that you oftentimes don't see that are busy working on putting their energy to understanding those proposals and reviewing those. And that's the vast majority of the work that we've been doing, that our staff have been doing, is focused on our community responsive grants. So I wanted to give a big nod because those are tremendous hours on hard deadlines to get to this phase and now move into this next phase, which is really bringing life to these projects in our scoring panels. So just big kudos to the team that have been working hard on that, and the team that you all often don't see, but do the hard work with community. 2, I want to just give a brief update on our staff recruitments. We've filled a couple more positions, our engagement positions on our team as of last week, and have signed offer letters for folks that will start on April 24th. So you all should be meeting those folks very soon here, and we're incredibly excited about just growing the team and being on the steady growth curve that we're on. Just to give a sense for some of those, and this is just to name some of the dynamics. Some of those staff recruitments began back in September of last year. So I just want to name the timelines that, unfortunately, and the realities around recruitment within the city and what they do take, and it's an important acknowledgement. We are currently underway on reviewing also about almost 100 applications for our clean energy lead, single family home lead position that's underway, and anticipate interviews in April. Our clean energy program, senior program manager, that recruitment is out and currently encourage folks to apply. That'll close on April 1st. Our workforce and contractor equity policy manager position is also currently out, and we had a robust information session earlier this week, and that also closes April 1st. Next up, we will be heading out with another batch of positions, including project managers for our clean energy, transportation decarbonization, regenerative ag and green infrastructure work as well. So we are working on those recruitments and just trying to stage these given the amount of effort that goes into the interview panels and bringing in the talented staff that you all have seen before you. Okay, so that's just a little bit on our recruitment and work that'll continue to go on. Next, maybe is another piece of recruitment, but we also closed out our PCEF Committee recruitment to bring on a replacement for Michael Eden Hill, who will be rolling off of the committee here soon. So that recruitment is closed, and we've got close a little bit close to about 20 applicants, and it's a really strong pool, and we're excited to move into the process where we whittle that down. And then lastly on the list was just the continued work that is happening on the first set of allocations that were recommended on February 2nd. And so, apologies here, moving the slide deck. We are actively working with our Bureau partners here to submit some of that detailed scoping narrative as well as budgeting information that we need to appropriately track and build out ultimately the language that will inform the CIP amendment, but also the language that we will bring before you all as part of your ask to review the outcomes, the metrics, measures, et cetera, that those programs are going to be taking on. So we've just sort of took the ball and put it back into our court of our Bureau colleagues and expect them to bring that back to us in the coming few weeks, where we'll probably have a little bit of back and forth amongst our staff as well as theirs before bringing that to you all likely in May for your review and feedback. So that is going on, but I will name it is a perpetual juggling act of making sure we're continuing to advance our community responsive grants review process, as well as keeping some of that other work going in addition to the climate investment plan. And then I think maybe just some nuggets of takeaways that I think really will encourage and figure out ways to bring our Bureau colleagues and partners is this work is changing the way we're doing business in the city. I mean, I've been heartened by conversations we've had, whether it's with Bureau of Environmental Services, whether it's with PBOT, and that we are clients. We are their clients now. And the conversation is, how do we make our work more community centered? What does that look like? And these investments are bringing that charge to them. And in many ways, we are trying to staff up as quickly as possible so we can appropriately serve and be on the other side to hold those conversations and bring those forward. But we've just got a handful of nuggets around the excitement, particularly in some of our maintenance crew within the Bureau of Transportation around the work that we'll be doing in maintaining bike lanes and the significant investment that's doing in growing the scale and pace of that work. So there's a lot of excitement as folks are getting underway, and in some ways, conversations with PBOT have been further advanced because of the previous work we have within the climate investment plan. So we're actively working on our interagency agreements there as well. So that's just to say that the work is happening, and we are figuring out how to prioritize it and figure out what things we can move sooner rather than later, given this is a substantial amount of new work for us. Okay, so that really just sums up the program updates. It'll certainly come back as we have other discussions, but I wanted to make sure and set you all up and make sure you knew that other work was happening as these conversations are in the background, but form the vast majority of the work that our team does on day to day.
Paul?
Thank you, Sam. Excellent report. I appreciate the updates. I couldn't quite catch the month that you thought that the responses back from the bureaus would come back to us. What month do you think that would be?
May.
May. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, we know that inevitably there's always a little bit of back and forth before we're willing to bring our product to you all. So we've got some early deadlines for them, and then we'll have a little back and forth before we bring out the draft to you all.
Does the committee have any comments or additional comments or questions for Sam? Megan?
Yeah, hi. Thanks, Sam. Helpful updates. I mean, it's a bummer to hear how long it takes to hire, but it's helpful for us to know all kind of, all the ins and outs of the struggles and the reality so that we can make informed decisions. So that's kind of one comment, and glad about that we'll hear back from the city bureaus. And my comment or question is more about the RFP 3. I've expressed over a few meetings, and I think some of our public input has been to kind of keep that the reality or fact that we got a lot of interest in RFP 3 and hopefully a lot of good quality applications. I know you're still reviewing them. Keep that in mind as we consider our deliberations on budget allocation for this large project round. So I guess it's more of a comment. I'm not sure I have a really specific question there, but I guess could you just add a little more context to that? The way we can hold both.
Thank you. I think, Megan, what I would offer there is that as we get on the other side of scoring panels, and I'd have to tag Katie to give me a sense of timeline when we think we'll have that get to the other side of scoring panels. That'll give us a good sense for both, the projects, both the just how projects are overall faring out in our I think we see we're seeing a strong evolution in the community around the proposals and the funding asks, and it's exciting and good. And I think we're still in the process of making sense of that. And I expect by the time we get to the other side of the review panels, we'll have a better sense for, in some ways, providing some narrative or some context to how we think it's playing out in the context of, we said we had 60 million of available funding. What does that look like? How is that breaking down in terms of the number of projects? What does that look like in terms of our near-term capacity to administer projects and then further our capacity? And so I think we can bring that to you and give you a little bit of a flavor of where we think we're going, recognizing that we're going to want to also be respectful of folks that are awaiting decisions and making sure we're respectful to the process. So I think I'm happy to follow. We're happy to follow up and give you more of a sense of that timeline of when we think we could have that discussion. My guess is it would likely be around June and July, but I'd have to have Katie chime in and further to speak to that.
I'll just react back, and then I see Maria's hand up. Or Katie, do you want to add anything else?
I'll just confirm that Sam is right. I think we'll be wrapping up scoring panels around the end of May.
Okay, so what I think for committee deliberations, I think that means that as we talk about tonight's large projects, coalition projects, we also will be getting an update from Peter, the economist, in April sometime, right? May, I forget the spring. And I think we're gearing up for all of our recommendations to go together to City Council before the fall budget bump process. So I guess what I'm hearing is that can happen in summer, like our deliberations on the amount allocated for RFP 3. Once you have more full information.
Well, the discussion would largely be not about RFP 3. We would give you a flavor. It'd likely about whether to increase allocations, for instance, if that's where you want to do around community responsive grants. But RFP 3, we've got our process. We will be managing that, but it would be a broader conversation.
I more meant as the committee, we'd be deliberating on the allocations. So if you all come to us and say, well, 85 million were really great projects that we we would have that discussion then.
I think we can follow up on the kind of discussion we can support at that point. It wouldn't be explicitly focused on RFP 3, more at a macro level, allocations to community responsive grants at the right level at that point.
All right, Maria.
Thank you. This is a comment too on RFP3. I asked Tracy to link the RFP3 website up there since we keep mentioning it, but I want to thank all of the PCEF staff and the applicants for making this happen. I thought it was impressive that we received more than $300 million in proposals for up to $60 million of awards. It shows that people are really into this and they want to get their projects and planning efforts funded. I also want to comment on the set one of allocations that we seem to have moved forward from already. I still get comments from people, either it's the media or community members, about their concerns with that first set of allocations and their curiosity about where that is now. Sam, are you able to share any kind of updates as to whether those amounts have already been factored into the mayor's budget, and have those been officially accepted by council, and any kind of other clarity you can provide about that status? I know we're going to talk about the set two of allocations, but you can elaborate more on those allocations, and if people can still weigh in on that, let us know.
Absolutely. Thank you. Maria, that's a great question. They have been loaded into the Bureau requested budgets. The mayor's proposed budget isn't going to be coming out until May, but you can expect that they'll show up there. The process now that we're going through is refining that and refining the detail as part of that. As you know, this process from the very outset has been far from ideal, I think, for everyone, obviously, you all central to that. But we are in the process of refining that. But bureaus, first step is the bureaus load their requested budgets. The mayor's staff will take that in. So it did make its way into the bureau requested budgets. We are working with the city budget office and team to make sure that it's in alignment with our understanding as well as with the bureaus. The mayor will then release his proposed budget in early May. And then the council, as part of their regular deliberations, will have those public deliberations around the budget, at which point if folks wanted to chime in, they can chime in as part of just the way they would chime in on any budget item. And so so it has not gone in front of the full council yet. It's still sort of in the churn in the system.
Thank you. That makes sense. I know for the people listening, the coalition members and the individuals who are concerned, they want to know how to plug in. And I think that council space seems like the place to continue that dialogue.
All right, we will now move on to the next item on the agenda. And that is the process and the solicitation framework proposal for the second set of allocating additional PCEF funds.
Hey, y'all. I'm going to try to get us, I'm looking at the time, so we may end up having to hit our break here, but I'll give a quick little at the front end here, just as a reminder to everyone. Folks, we adopted the climate investment plan, $750 million over the next 5 years, and the community responsive grants, as a reminder, fit within that, as well as 16 strategic programs, a tree maintenance reserve fund, and a whole body of work that's exciting in that, and that we're busy working on and expect to start bringing to council in piecemeal as part of IGAs, intergovernmental agreements that we're bringing for approval, as part of requests for proposals that we plan to solicit to do that work. So that plan is well into motion, and that is, and the community responsive grants are a core part of that. As you all know, shortly after we passed that plan, surprise, surprise, we find out that there is a substantial additional amount of funding that's projected to come into the fund over the next 5 years. And so that's set underway for us, this process of figuring out how do we want to allocate those resources. Timing being what it was, and given the fact that, as you all know, there were significant budget constraints heading to the city, we did run the unideal process that we had, and that set in their way the initial set of recommendations that you all moved forward back on February 2nd to allocate a portion of those resources to city-aligned work, whether it's focused on bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure or focused on rehabs for existing affordable housing. So that was set underway in large part because of the confluence of the timing of where the city did have its gaps in climate-aligned program that would have otherwise been cut, and this funding opportunity. And yet there's still more on the table, part of what we're discussing this evening. And so I think the backdrop to all of this is that there is a climate emergency work plan, there is our climate investment plan, and then there is the initial allocations that were set underway. And I think in many ways, I'm excited by the proposal that initially started in this regard. I give the kudos to Megan and Ramses around how to complement the existing work that we've done in the past around the climate investment plan, around our community responsive grants, around some of the significant investments we've made within the city, and find ways to solicit additional ideas, proposals from the community and others to complement that. And that's exactly what this next piece is intended to do. So over the past few months, we've met many times. Thank you all. It's been a lot of evenings, and I know as we get to the warmer weather, we want to give those back to you all. So we're here in March. And I note that February 2nd is when you all made the initial first set of allocations. What we're working towards now is figuring out and getting to another set of allocations prior to the September fall budget monitoring process. That is the next sort of window, at least for the city, where if there's other ideas, that would be the relevant window. And so that's what I believe the next timeline proposal that's in front of you all is geared to get city recommendations to the city prior to that, around Labor Day. Which gets us to the framework that is up on our website that you all have had a little bit of time to review, which is a process and a framework for allocating additional funds, dubbed Community Coalition and Innovation Funding. So really, we're going to walk through at a high level what that is, although for folks that are joining us online, if you go to the meeting page, you'll see the broader 4-page write-up that spells out these elements. So the committee is aiming to recommend approximately $158 million in additional funding allocations, plus any surplus forecasted revenues in the spring 2024 revenue update. As you know, in a month and some change, you'll get another revenue update. And so this process that we're talking through is to allocate those additional resources. To one, identify, and I think the complementarity here is to identify and support the PCEF mission, and really do so in a more collaborative framework that we haven't supported in the past through high-impact multi-stakeholder projects. We've had collaborations happen as a function of community groups coming together on their own. Here we're saying we want to see more of those, particularly in order to bring some of those bigger wins. The framework is open to public-private partnerships, and that's actually, you'll see the further language that's more detailed is preferably to public-private partnerships. But it is open to coalitions made up of organizations of all types. Framework that you all are discussing or going to be considering tonight is going to set up a framework where you both solicit, it'd be essentially a request for interest. You'll solicit letters of interest first, with those due in this spring, followed by requesting full applications due later in the summer in order to make a funding recommendation by the start of fall. You all were, the proposal framework outlines soliciting funding allocations for proposals that range from 20 to 100 million. Again, this goes and captures that segment of proposals that we have not considered in the past, given that our prior caps were smaller than that. And so this is looking for those larger projects, which for us as a program has been important and critical given administrative realities, that being able to fund larger projects means we can fund 4 to 6 projects, 3 to 5 projects, or fewer projects that are larger, more significant, but don't necessarily drain us of the existing resources that we have that are focused on our community responsive grant administration. And then the framework here, again, to reiterate, is it's a 2-step process focused on a letter of intent, followed by a full application for folks that are invited to submit a full application. And we have about 3 more slides where we're getting a little bit more detail. So overall, the sort of tagline is these are projects that create climate action solutions that center PCEF priority populations and will be completed by 2029. So that is there are many projects out there, many concepts out there that will play out over the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. Here it's important we're seeking near-term emissions reductions projects that will come to completion by 2029. This language is a shorthand, but it's you all will be seeking in this community-centered coalitions that preferably include at least 1 public partner, in addition to any one of the following: nonprofit, community-based organizations, labor organizations, tribal entities, academia, businesses, and/or private utilities. Specifically, the projects must result in meaningful and measurable greenhouse gas emissions reductions or sequestration, except of course, workforce development project where that's an indirect benefit. And then the primary applicant must be a nonprofit or government entity and have co-applicants or demonstrate support for community coalition. And in the full application proposal, the primary applicant must submit a community benefits plan or similar. And then lastly, at least one nonprofit community-based organization with a minimum number of 8 years experience in conducting community engagement in Portland focused on PCEF party populations must be a member of the coalition. Okay, so I think that is the main sort of element here. And what I'm going to do is go through the next couple slides before we get to the break, give it to our co-chairs, and then we'll close out and let folks have their break and then come back for the discussion. Process again, folks, is that we would be calling in letters of interest really kicking off in April, early April. Those are due after about 40 days or so. So it is a tight window, I will acknowledge that, but that is a letter of interest, is a lower burden, a lower bar. You all will review those alongside staff, and we will invite back 4 to 8 proposals. And then the to submit a full application. Those would be due roughly a month and a half later. And then we would begin the broader review with a subcommittee of the committee members and staff and potentially others through the latter half of summer with an expectation to come back, deliberate as a committee, and make recommendations to council by September 2nd. So I want to turn before that, I want to go ahead and turn it to our co-chairs who framed this up, developed this whole largely, and we as staff really provided our input and feedback around feasibility elements where we could help provide clarity. But turn it to Megan and Ramses, and then imagine it may be appropriate for a break.
Thanks, Sam, for that overview. I'll take a first stab here. I just want to sort of just riff on some words from the testimony from Lenny D on this being a pivotal moment. This is a pivotal moment for us, not just as a program, but also for the city and here for the country. So we have been dealing with climate change in the backdrop of social inequality, in the backdrop of affordability, housing crisis, and obviously the backdrop of declining revenue at the city and other regional governments. So that is the context that we're in. I think within this framework, we have done the best, I think, to weave in the public feedback. But I just want to go back to like where we were a few years ago, experiencing the heat domes, experiencing, the wildfire smoke and the lack of, the ability to breathe during those forest fires. Like that was a very powerless moment that we were in. And we knew that PCEF had funds to be able to potentially address this. And we were able to adapt our way of thinking for the program, such as providing, putting funding aside for cooling services around heating or cooling, such as heat pumps. Those are things that we were quick to do. I think we've been, criticized for how we rolled out the program, but I think we took some leadership in thinking about how we approach this work. I just wanted to zero in on just like the powerlessness of how we felt. And I think just the reality that how we move forward, we have to think about how we adapt. We have to think about how we change the way we live, eat, how we treat each other. Like it is clear through the comments, just the central question around community. And community of like how we work together with government, how we work with community as nonprofit organizations, that is strife relationship. But what I would sort of just, I think, recommend here is and how we frame this application is we need community to address some of the structural issues that we can. And if we can address workforce challenges, business opportunities, address social inequality while we address climate change, that would be a great win. If we can find ways to have a teacher, a firefighter, a janitorial worker see themselves in climate change, that's a win. If we can find ways to make sure that a homeowner, a renter, be able to see themselves in climate action, that will be a win. But I think the spirit of here is we need all hands on deck on how we approach climate change. And so I think we have the benefit of having surplus of funds. And yet we know that these funds are not going to be enough. We're going to need leadership to wake up to the reality that our future may likely see more heat domes. We may likely see more wildfires. And the last thing I want us to be, potentially 6 months from now, potentially a year from now, is the feeling of powerlessness we felt when we were experiencing those heat domes, or the powerlessness that we felt with our children breathing wildfire smoke. So I think we have an opportunity, but that opportunity requires, I think, elected officials, not just at the city of Portland, elected officials at our schools, not just our schools, but our ports, to work in collaboration with community and workers. So I think that is what we're hoping to do with this framework, is to say, hey, let's put some funding to promote public-private collaborations, though not limited, but we want to see coalitions coming together to find opportunities to achieve a higher outcome, whether it be, again, in regenerative agriculture, whether, again, it be in energy efficiency, whether, again, it be in transportation. We're going to need a hands-on deck. So I think this is a good opportunity to test what could work and if we can achieve higher outcomes. So that, I think, is the spirit. We additionally, I think, took some inspiration from some of the federal grants that have promoted community benefits and community, both agreements and plans embedded in federal grant making. So I think we've seen grants being rolled out from Department of Energy, EPA, further promoting a coalition framework. So I just want to say that that's kind of in the spirit here. I think, again, I think we've heard testimony and public feedback in the past about balancing how we treat community organizations and government equally. With this approach, we are doing that. We've heard in the past barriers, again, with our application system. Hopefully with a letter of interest, we can learn, hey, by limiting an initial application to 3 to 6 pages, can we learn some lessons through a process like that? And through the process of an LOI, inviting folks for a full application, can we as a committee further encourage coalitions to be strengthened? Can we further encourage government to better be in coalition with community organizations? So I hope that is reflected here. I look forward to the conversation after our break. But Megan, sorry if I took more energy. I told myself limit it to 2 minutes here on my end, but I don't know if there's more you want to add here, Megan.
You covered a lot of good bases, Ranfis. I'll just say, we heard some public testimony, and I also heard kind of individually that I think a lot of folks from like the original PCEF coalition and a lot of our activists are excited by a big, large project opportunity. We haven't had that yet. That's available to community orgs, schools, etc. So I'm excited about that. And, Ranfis already talked about coalition projects. Like, I think it's a unique thing. I mentioned this in a past meeting. Our community responsive grant application is competitive in nature. It sort of, it requires organizations to go against each other for funding, and we fund the ones that come out on top in our scoring rubric. And that, that's how that works. But I think the coalition project allows us to do something different, where we're encouraging people to work together, and hopefully that will be good kind of healing and build all the networks we need in this time period to adapt to climate change. And also, we've already heard about some great projects, so I can only imagine all the great ones that will pour in once we have a LOI out. We've heard about from the Regen Ag Coalition. We heard about 82nd Avenue. We heard from schools. DPAVE mentioned a few in their letter to us. Like, I have no doubt we're going to just get tons of great. Probably the hard thing's going to be we're going to get a lot of great ones. So I'm excited about all that. So yeah, hopefully committee members feel like you've had a lot of chance to think about this over the last month and chime in. But I guess That's all
Thank
clear
you,
now.
Megan. At this time, we will take our break and come back at 7:20. So 7:20, we'll come back and continue the conversation regarding the framework. Sam, are you ready to continue with the process and framework for the second set of allocations? And again, I just want everyone to be clear, this as the continuation of this conversation with the goal being to have process agreement. So turning it over to you, Sam.
Yeah, I just wanted to appreciate both and thank Megan and Ramfis for pulling that together and giving us an opportunity to workshop it alongside and get feedback from committee members. I think the conversation at this point really turns back to committee members and questions you all may have. Because just to give you all the sneak peek, my next slide is a temperature check, and then there's a decision slide following that.
All right, committee members, in terms of the temperature check, I'll just call on you as I see as hands are raised for comments.
And maybe I might encourage, just to get a little bit discussion out of the way first, just Tracy, I might just encourage just general questions before we move to a temperature check and the decision comes to a neat close.
Thank you, Sam. Robin?
Yeah, thanks everybody for their work on this. I know it was rushed and a lot of heavy lifting going on behind the scenes. You know, I'll share my temperature check. I mean, in general, I'm kind of in favor of this, but I do have one concern, and that is the tight timeline that we have here. You know, I'm working on a collaboration with some other nonprofits, and we're considering pursuing an EPA community change grant in the $10 to $20 million range. And all in all, there's a lot of similarities between that program and this, also a lot of differences. And we've had about 2 months to identify partners, form partnerships, define the project, get community input, which, as you know, takes time. And you know, we need to make a go no go decision sometime soon. And this does not include the application itself. And you know, quite honestly, doing all this in 2 months is a huge challenge. So I'm very concerned about giving the collaborations here a tad over just 1 month to do the same. And I'm also very concerned that this sets us and them for failure because we're rushing the very critical kind of incubation or gestation period that's very necessary to form these collaborative projects. So my question is, what can we do to either give collaborations more lead time, or is there an option to disassociate, some of the funding from the city's budget timeline, which, in my opinion, creates a very artificial deadline based upon politics and bureaucracy, and one that does not necessarily benefit communities.
That question might have been for me, Paul. Robin, I think you're absolutely correct in that it is more time is going to be better. This is going to generally lean on folks will have needed to have already in some form or another thought through generally what the ideas, and we know those ideas exist. So I think I look at this in 2 ways. One, you're absolutely correct in that the moment that we are in now, yes, the work that we've been doing with our elected leadership, council, others, we do need to bring a decision to them around how to allocate these resources within that frame. I think the answer to that is yes, and I think maybe just to be blunt about it, I think at some point you lose your ability to drive that conversation. And so that's maybe the blunt answer there. And then and I think just to acknowledge that it is a shorter window. At the same end, both letters that you have received as well as letters that you haven't received that we know are out there, projects that are out there, we do know that this is a feasible timeline for a range of those sort of coalition proposals. So while is it ideal? No. More time would be better, and at the same end, we do feel confident that within that time frame, you will receive strong proposals that will meet these objectives. So.
Ramfis?
Yeah, I just want to appreciate just Robin sharing his experience on that. I think you're probably right on this one, Robin. I think I think, I think this is probably an area we'll probably learn some lessons as well. Like it's not, I agree with you, it's not the most ideal timeline. And, frankly, I think as we roll out the program, if community folks ask for more time, like, maybe we can find a conversation point here if we do need to explore some kind of a longer timeline. But at the moment, it seems like this is the kind of the framework we're working on, and let's test out and see the volume of applications we get come in first.
I guess just one quick comment is that, yeah, I know the bulk of this money, we got to push through this process. I get it. I'm not happy about it, but I get it. But, can't we set aside 10 or 20 million and just say, give people more time? Because, not everybody has these ideas already pre-incubated. I'm concerned that we risk kind of missing out on those. And if there's an opportunity to set aside some, for some of the newer collaborations that's formed, I think that would be beneficial.
I think,
I guess on that point, Robin, do you feel like it's important we make a decision to set aside that fund, or do you think we can make that decision later? Like, say we go through this process, maybe we're not unhappy, maybe say, hey, let's set aside 20 million.
I'm okay if when we see the applications come in, maybe we have a billion fantastic projects, and great, that's not an issue. But if we're struggling for projects, and there's some projects that we might want, we're kind of forced to fund just because we have a limited number of good applications, I'd like to be able to have that option. Or maybe give those projects that are on the borderline, give them a little bit more time, and to further develop their idea. So I'm okay to see what comes in, but I'd like to have that flex. I don't want to be forced to send along proposals that are just rushed.
And if I might, Sam, I think that resonates here. I think we still have in this framework the ability to say yes or no. We don't have to necessarily have to approve everything that comes our way. But Sam, fact check me here.
Yep, that's correct. That's correct. In fact, to be direct about it, I think we are incredibly sensitive to. A big part of this is wanting to find those opportunities which we know exist. I think the beautiful part of this structure and the way this proposal is set out is that it does get us in the ballpark with proposals that we have historically not been in the ballpark with, just because the framework of the structure that we've had before was geared towards smaller projects. So I think we get those projects, and that works really well in terms of being able to get big wins that are more administratively efficient, that are bringing in those collaborations, those coalitions. So I think this does work well. And at the same end, at the other end of it, I would say we would in fact very much discourage folks from being forced to fund or make a recommendation on something that is not ready. I think the conversation at that point is, what can we do about that? And what are we? So I think you get the LOIs, the letters of interest, you evaluate those. And then I think there's a discussion there around, okay, we've got these that we're ready to request a full proposal from. That's wonderful. That's great. That keeps the ball moving forward. I think if there's another conversation there, I want to be very clear and have a clear-eyed conversation on how that works with the existing capacity we have, which as we get to that point won't be vastly different than what it is now. And so I think that I will agree with Ramphis around that there is absolutely a discussion point around then I don't think that's a decision you have to make now. But I think that it would be a discussion then, given the context that we are in then and what we're seeing in the proposals and what do they need, and do we have within our program, do we have what we need to support that? Does that align? But you can always set aside funding and not allocate. It would just go unallocated at that point. And I think that is a decision and that is a calculation to make then.
Faith?
I didn't prepare remarks, so I'm reacting now rather than having a really great response. But I guess I'll just start by saying is I missed our last meeting together, and I really like this proposal. I really, so I am in favor, and my temperature check is warm. I particularly like the way in which there's synergy instead of overlap with the ways in which we've already allocated funding, both in the CIP and in the first tranche of these excess funds, and in and the community responsive grants. I just love that we're kind of covering vast ground of ideas, of community-based ideas coming forward, and so that to me is a real positive. Robin, thank you so much for sharing your experience with a community change grant. I think it's completely analogous, and best of luck to you in that as well. I do think there's a timing issue here. I think that this is going to be serving projects that are already past that ideation phase, and that's great. That's fine. There is a way that we might tweak the language a bit to provide a little bit more time. That's not time in decision making, but it's time in getting a robust community benefits agreement in place. I think it's a good the community benefits idea is well founded. There's lots of experience. We have DOE and others with the federal government requiring those for all of the current federal funding. So it's really a well-known avenue to get community input and benefit. But if all of those community members are not at the table yet, a 2-month time frame is too short to put a community benefits agreement in place. 6 months is pretty damn short, right? So maybe we alter that language a little bit to say that it is required, or something like it is required, but it doesn't have to be in place at the time of the application. It needs to be, you need to have an end date for that. I haven't really thought about what that time frame would look like, but it's a little bit of a way of addressing both Robin's question and concerns we heard through public comment around that being perhaps a too strict of a requirement. So it might be one way of massaging that a little bit to go both get at the intent and address real timing concerns. And hopefully what we would end up with was much stronger, meatier community benefit agreements than perhaps DOE is going to get at the end of the day. So I would be in favor of that. And one point of caution, I would say we talked a little bit about adding ambiguity to make decisions later. And of course, I am not at all advocating for funding projects that are not ready to go. Let's certainly not do that or make decisions about that. But I don't think we should add ambiguity to the process. I think it should be as clear as possible so that people can actually respond and know what they're responding to. So let's not have set-asides in my opinion, let's not do set-asides at the beginning. Let's make decisions based on what comes in the door. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Faith. Paul?
Thank you. I'll offer my temperature check later, but just in response to the timeline, I appreciate that PCEF has been flexible with the timeline and I think applicants appreciate when funders hear them and say we need more time. And so I think it's okay to approve something like this timeline for now. And if we hear from project participants or potential project participants, this timeline is just not working for them, then I think as a committee, we can come back and address that. But my question to you, Sam, is the very end. I'm looking at, I think it's the last page of that document where it's got all the dates and it says September 2nd recommendation. Is that a hard deadline to meet a city schedule, or do we have flexibility with that? Can't hear you.
Thank you. It is a hard deadline for projects that would be funded within the city. I think that there is a place where I'm hesitating because I think you need to start there. I think if you get to the letters of interest and a city project is not rising to the top, I think you can have a different conversation. That I think we can at least say, okay, there's not a city project that's rising to the top here, but you would need to start there if any one of these projects are potentially projects that are going to be supporting the city. And what I mean, and to be, whether it is additional projects within PBOT, whether it is projects associated with 82nd Avenue, there are projects where we know, I can name one project, for instance, you all have heard and gotten public comment on, and that's around the 82nd Avenue project and the potential bus rapid transit, a project that has a tremendous amount of community support. That project needs a decision by September, for instance. So timelines are imperfect, and we will always miss something. I just want to name the reality of that, but I think it's going to be important that we start there and clearly communicate that. And at the same end, there's a reality that we get after we get to the letters of interest and review those, and we may see that timeline may be less relevant. That deadline may be less relevant at that point. We can review that then. And what I mean by that, it just may be that the projects that are advancing beyond that, their funding deadlines, in order for them to move forward, in order for them to fill out their capital stack, may not need that. And but I think that's hard to say at this point. I think you need to start with assuming that we're operating on a September deadline.
So do you think it's possible that if we had, say, some proposals that had the city as the lead or a participant and they're need to go by that deadline, but there might be another set that doesn't involve the city and they could even come later? I mean, I wouldn't want to encourage that, but at least if there's some that say we need more time, I'm just pressing for more time somewhere.
Yeah, I think in order to make a decision, I think you're going to want to make a decision altogether. So I think that part is going to, but I think and I think it in some ways goes back to actually Faith's comment, where I think you can entertain more time with an applicant and viewing their letter of interest and where they are within the project is around exactly what are you requiring for the full proposal and how is that responsive to where that project is in that time. Meaning that it may be that there is a concept that you like, that you want to fund, and there's a few details that you're not going to get because, again, they're going to take a little bit more time. I think we need in substance, we need to understand the what. I think that's not going to change just in order to be able to evaluate one project versus another. But I think there are going to be places where you can give more leeway around some of the details of a project proposal, not on the budget, but in terms of some of the scope elements that you can give more leeway once we get to seeing the letters of interest and knowing sort of where they are. As in, as I noted, some projects are going to be pretty well formulated, and there are going to be others that are going to need a little bit more. And that difference exists. I mean, that difference exists within our community responsive grants today that we review. They're in various stages of readiness, and they still get to the end, and we make awards, and we work with the grantees to flesh out the details.
Great, thank you.
Ramfis, your hand was previously raised. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, sorry, I was gonna respond to feedback from Faith. Not to just jump back, but appreciate your comments there, Faith. I think the original intent for the community benefits plan and community benefits agreement was just to ensure, balance of power, ensuring that, in these coalitions, especially where folks are working together with government, that, there are clear benefits, that these aren't just coalitions in name only, but, that there is, that we're delivering benefits to the community. So I think that's the intent. So in terms of, I think you're probably right in terms of how quickly an agreement can come together or a community benefit plan. I think that the intent was to have that be fleshed out in the full application. But I think, flexibility there, I'll defer maybe to staff on just the future of the timing for that conversation. But as long as I think we meet the intent, I think I'm open to that and deliberate with others on how that's fully executed.
Megan?
Well, Faith, did you want to respond back to Ranfit as well? Because I'm going to change topics slightly. No, okay. Yeah, I have a different topic to bring up, and on page 3, there's a line that says, and I think I advocated for this line, and I just wanted to bring it up to everybody's attention and also maybe suggest we somewhere add some examples or detail, but under a full application, PCEF may provide additional resources to support the development of proposals. And one thing we were talking about kind of that influence of adding this is that, as people have pointed out, coalitions can be really hard to form, and some groups will already have staff capacity and resources to put together a great application, and other orgs may need support. So Sam, Ranfis, or others, could you elaborate like what that could mean? May provide additional resources, and like how would orgs request that? Is it like grant writer? Is it a convener, facilitator? Is it PCEF staff hosting things? I think we talked about all of these, and I've just heard from orgs who've been like, we're going to need support to put together such a huge application.
As we always do, we will offer a Q&A session and be responsive to questions that come to that cycle. I think the resources that we will be able to offer in earnest is really probably a contract facilitator. That is the type of resource that if a group needs a contract facilitator, that is the type of resource we could offer to a group. That's in the likelihood of our contract resources that we have and the timeline that we're talking about, that would be it.
I just wonder if we ought to be more specific about that here and or on supporting materials, because potential applicants will probably wonder.
Noted. When we flesh this out as this is our framework for building out ultimately that request for interest at RFI, we will detail those out. That absolutely, we will detail those out amongst other things. Yes.
And that might respond to some of the concerns raised about timing, maybe at least partially, and that if there are resources to help coalitions have those conversations more quickly, maybe it would help with that issue too.
All right, are there additional questions or comments from committee members? D'Angelo.
Thank you for recognizing me. I do have a comment, and I'll try to be brief. While I do share Robin's concerns, as well as the potential for allocation of funds to provide more time, I do want to focus a lot on the positives of this, and I wrote a couple of notes. I'm going to kind of reference what I wrote, but I went to an event last night, and there was a very loud community voice that PCEF funds should be allocated the way that they were initially supposed to be allocated. There was quite a bit of pushback to this, but a positive for me is that this might not have been the cleanest process, but it was also an unprecedented process. And I think we have to give the grace to some capacity, or some capacity, that this is a new thing. And so when you're doing unprecedented things, you're the first to do something in a process. You don't have the opportunity to learn from the mistakes of others. You happen to be the mistake, but you also have the grace and the opportunity to show people how to get it right. I'm pleased that the community was able to speak and able to actually participate in this, to have a community partnership with these government agencies to actually do some of this work. And even if this wasn't the cleanest result, like I said, it's an opportunity to do better. And I'm extremely grateful to be on this committee, to have listened to the staff, the co-chairs that have constructed this, and everyone that's provided comment to even get us to this point. So I just want to say that even though, again, this may not have been the best way to get this done, I acknowledge that. But with the timeline that we had for the community to still participate, and for this to still be a process that is continually changing, evolving, being refined to be the best that it can be for those community benefits to go where they need to go. I want to recognize that and just say that as we learn through this process, we will absolutely do better to make sure that we're more prepared, that the community continues to have a voice, that PCEF funds are allocated the way that they're supposed to be allocated, that they're always the way they were supposed to be allocated. But we're growing and we have to also recognize those growing pains as well. So kudos to everybody involved. I think that might be my temperature check as well, but those are my thoughts.
Thank you, D'Angelo. Maria.
I want to thank the co-chairs, Megan and Runfees, for moving the committee quickly to develop this proposal. I feel so much more confident with what we have here tonight compared to lots of vague options and really rushed options and timelines that we were seeing earlier in the year. So this is a huge step forward. Like what many of you said, I think the timeline is a concern. It does favor some coalitions and partnerships and relationships that have already been formed or already have shovel-ready projects in the mix. But we should continue to commit resources, however clear we can be about any technical assistance we can provide in this application process, to hear some of those newer projects or newer partnerships that need a little bit of a boost. So I think the facilitators are a great start, but I know there's a little more we can do to help around that. I know there's community concerns too around, the relationships between nonprofit groups, for example, and public agencies, and to make sure they're not tokenized in that coalition forming process to be used as just co-applicants to be able to push an application forward. I also just want to hear if anybody else can uplift any other coalitions that have formed, like 82nd Avenue, that have inspired this process, and are we able to share that more openly right now? It would help to hear that you might have some good candidates that inspired this kind of formation. And that's all.
Faith.
I'd love to hear if there was an answer to Maria's last question.
This is this is Rand Feast. I'll chime in where I've heard some initial interest in this, and hopefully we'll see these proposals reflected here. I think there have been some interest from some of our teacher unions and schools thinking about it more of a community school model around applying for funds around retrofits for schools and thinking about depavement and regenerative agriculture. There are folks beginning to think about this and this opportunity around, again, this framework of a coalition approach. So that's one that I think familiar of. Hopefully this is reflective of, I think, some of the feedback we've received from coalition groups that we've already received, public letters around regenerative agriculture. So I hope this is an opportunity reflective there. But those are, I think, two that just come to mind here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Tracy, I wonder if you can come back to me. I have such a nit comment that it's not at this kind of more generative scale. So I'd love to.
Sure. I'll move on to Paul.
Thank you. In response to that question though, Faith, is I'm aware of several coalitions, but I haven't reached out to them about this proposal yet because I want to make sure it passes first, and then I can do outreach. But I'm anticipating there'll be a lot of interest, which is good. Just offering my temperature check, I just wanted to thank everyone that's presented written testimony. I went through that all the other day and is very powerful, and it makes a big difference. And I want to thank those who provided testimony at our committee meetings. They all make a difference, and it does give us the kind of backing that we need to try something new and big, like what we're doing. In fact, this is an alternative to what was proposed earlier in the year, and I'm very comfortable with this approach, and I appreciate the hard work of the co-chairs. The document that you worked on is very clear, very direct, very easy to read. I know the staff had a big role in this as well, but your partnership here to produce this kind of an approach in such a short period of time is very much appreciated. I want to thank the PCEF staff and Ramfis for meeting with me earlier this week to go through the document. And what is presented tonight is something I'm comfortable with and willing to support. Thank you.
Michael.
I just want to thank everybody for putting this together. I'm not feeling really great right now, but I'll make it short. I have a very warm temperature check about this. I really appreciate you putting community collaboration at the forefront of this. And so I'm feeling really good about this additional $158 million in funding.
All right, and I misspoke earlier and called this section a temperature check. This is discussion. I want to make sure all committee members are weighing in before we move to the next slide, which will be the temperature check. So if any committee members who haven't voiced comments would like to do so at this time, in addition to those who have, I just want to make sure I didn't shut down discussion on this topic. Any additional comments? Faith.
Well, because it feels like we're wrapping up, I just want to echo also just deep appreciation for this document. It's also really well written, and it's hard to do something so complex so simply. So I really deeply appreciate it. My comment is about that. Actually, when I read the definition of community coalition in the document, I got a little bit concerned. Only because I thought there were some organizations missing. And so this description of public-private partnership coalitions made up of all organization types solves that entirely. But and I also I appreciated Sam said earlier in response to something else that we will tighten language as it goes to the LOI. And I feel comfortable knowing that we will not create ambiguity when it goes out for people to respond. So I appreciate that. And if anybody wants to know what my concerns or what I noticed as potential loopholes in our definitions, I'm happy to share that later. But again, it's not to the intent. The intent is clear. It's just, let's make it super clear for people who are responding.
All right, are there any other committee members that would like to share before we move on to the temperature check? A formal temperature check, that is. All right, Sam, I think we're ready to move on. And so the draft, oh, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because what we were recommending here is just folks to, the language you got here is around the committee adopting the process and framework in the agenda item A, but I wanted to capture, yes, we will just acknowledge that's the concept. We will build it out and bring that clarity. So just to be clear and confirm to Faith that, yeah, we'll build it out and bring that clarity, and it'll just give us a chance to have several folks go through and be like, what does that mean? What is that? Is the clarity there? So this is building out on the intent. And then two, I did just want to get that clarity. And in some ways, I actually would like to hear it from Ramfis around, I think we can work on the creating the space for a community benefits plan, community benefits agreement, or community workforce agreement. But I wanted to make sure that, we capture that here before we move forward, because I would say is a change to create flexibility and timeline for folks to develop that, still requiring they develop that, but that timeline to develop that. And because I just wanted to have you in some ways, if there's any succinct way you've got to, not to say it and how it goes out, but to make sure that we're capturing that intent and you're in agreement with it. Since you certainly carried in, that's an important piece. I know that you and others.
Yeah, I support that, and happy to reflect that here in the committee draft proposal. That's helpful. So with that, are we jumping into the proposal, or are we doing the temperature check first?
Well,
maybe let's create the.
Oh, go ahead, Sam.
I want to make sure we write out the proposal and then do that, and then at least we can do a quick temperature check and vote.
All right.
Sam, oh, sorry, Tracy.
So I was just going to say, so Sam, while you're writing out the proposal, I'll move forward with Faith's question or comment.
Well, my comment was, or it was a reflection of what you said, Sam. I thought you were asking Ranfis, do you have a timeline? And I was going to offer the specificity of perhaps this is one that where you would establish, you would have a signed or written or agreed to all of the community benefits plans workforce agreement in place before there was a final contract. So you could still get a reservation or an award without it being finalized, but that you wouldn't be able to receive funding or have a contract with the city until it was finalized. So just another point in time where we know that there is motivation to finalize it is that you won't get funding without it.
Faith, I appreciate that recommendation. I think that recommendation works and it maintains the balance of power, I think. So if there were a power imbalance and funds were transferred, I think the urgency to have that community benefit agreement or community benefit plan or workforce agreement in place would lose its urgency. So I think that to me feels sufficient.
Maria?
It's kind of an odd question as we prepare for this proposal on the screen, but given how PCEF has experienced lots of surprises, should something happen with the first allocation, like it's probably unlikely that city council would not accept it or that they want another process, but would we go back to the drawing board for something like that and kind of adopt those first set of resources into this model? It's just something I might be dreaming of, daydreaming of on the side as we're talking, but can you let us in on like what a process could be like if that showed up on the table and we just address that as it happens?
The simplest and most easy answer I could give you is it would just increase the resources here. Those resources just become unallocated. That programming wouldn't move forward, and it would increase the resources that you would have here. So that's the most simple way to address it at that point.
Okay.
I hate public writing, y'all. Okay. We can figure out the intent here. This isn't going in the statute, but I think you're recommending to adopt the process in item agenda, with the exception requiring I'm not the lawyer in the room, but I think this captures the intent for folks that can just read it as simple reading. If folks think so, or have any suggested edits, I welcome them.
Sorry, I see Megan, but quickly, I think maybe if you replaced exception with amendment, I think that makes it clearer. I think you create an unintended new meaning by saying exception.
Thank you.
And Sam, there's another calling amendment modification. That was, someone suggested the word modification. Okay, Faith.
I don't want to go into the weeds, Sam, but I do have a question. When does an agreement with the city get signed? Does it get signed?
The agreement is part of, there's the awarding of funds, and then
Yeah.
there's the agreement with the primary contracted partner, and then that happens just before the disbursement of funds.
Okay, that's fine. Then this is fine.
Yeah, usually there is like the disbursement of funds, there is like a technical process, but the agreement is what you need to disperse any funding.
Okay.
Sam, I have a question for you where it says community workforce agreement, should be or?
Mm-hmm.
That is cool.
And on to you, Paul. You had your hand raised. Robin.
Yeah, thanks. Should there be some statement, not just requiring, but requiring an approved community benefit, blah, 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 blah? I mean, you know, someone could just write something on a scrap of paper and say, here's our plan. It's done, give us the money.
And requiring them executed. Oh wait, actually, I think that is already there. Requiring a community benefits plan to be executed prior to the disbursement of any funds. So,
but do we have to approve that?
I'm going to turn to Ramses on this one.
Sorry, Robin, can you repeat your question?
I'm a little bit in the weeds here, but you know, anybody can just submit a plan and it could suck. And you know, if they just submit a plan, they can still get the money. So is there some approval process that's required, or is there some other check and balance?
I think best practice is you definitely want to guarantee that it's a community negotiated community benefits plan or a community benefits agreement. So I would probably add the qualifier. We might be getting in the weeds here on just the modification, but yeah, I think if you want to say with the modification requiring a community, might feel redundant, but a community requiring community negotiated community benefits plan, benefits agreement, or workforce agreement.
I'm okay with that.
I know you have thoughts, Faith.
In the document that y'all put together, there was a link to what a community benefits agreement is. I think that's helpful, but I definitely do not think that we should be in the mode of approving them. That is not our place. So if we define what it is, that is a community negotiated agreement. But I don't think we have to put that language here.
Yeah, thanks, Faith. I think you're right. I think we could add the references, and those are well defined in the webpage there for the references to Department of Energy.
And I think, folks, in some ways, because of what community benefits agreements are and those references, it'll be, I mean, folks will hold us accountable to that. That's, I mean, it is a defined thing. So.
All right, so Sam, this is now the draft committee proposal that the committee will be taking a temperature check on. I just want to confirm that before we move on.
Correct, Tracy.
All right, what I will do, if there aren't any, if the committee doesn't have any final questions or comments related to the draft committee proposal, I will just start with committee members and call you based on what I see on the screen. So call for final questions or comments. All right, starting with you, Faith, temperature check on the proposal.
I'm not sure what my answer is on temperature check, but I approve if we were taking a vote. So what can you tell me what the options are?
Sam,
I'm in favor of this proposal. How about that one?
Perfect.
Okay.
Robin?
I'm good.
Ranfis,
I'm good as well.
Maria,
Good too. Someone had mentioned to me this week that they'd love to see PCEF use Fist of 5, but I'm good.
Michael,
I'm good with this proposal.
Alicia,
Support the proposal.
D'Angelo,
Full support.
Paul,
Totally supporting along with the amendment. Thank you.
all right, Sam, next steps.
I think Megan, did we get you? Sorry, I was only
Oh,
one.
I
I
didn't
was looking
see.
across my screen.
Okay, Megan, I'm sorry.
I got
It
you, Tracy.
went out of order.
It's okay. I am a 5. I think, Maria, we have in our processes that we use 5 to 5, but we don't actually do it, but I'm a 5, which is a yes.
All right, back to you, Sam.
All right. Well, then I think it's to you all, to someone to make the proposal, and we do the final vote.
It's Sam, aren't there slides related to the final vote? Okay.
Mhm.
So here's the modified consensus decision-making process.
I think we just need someone to read the proposal out, and then we go down the roll and have each committee member decide whether they affirm the proposal, stand aside, or do not support the proposal.
Great. Can we go back to the slide? Thank you. I guess I'll happy to make the motion. I recommend that the PCEF committee adopt the process and framework for allocating additional PCEF funds as presented in item A on the agenda, with the modification of requiring community benefits plan, community benefits agreement, and/or community workforce agreement to be executed prior to the disbursement of any allocated funds.
I'll second.
Thank you, Faith. All right, we'll now go to Sam, if you would repeat the process.
Okay. Now we just go down the roll, and you can indicate whether you affirm the proposal, whether you stand aside, or whether you do not support the proposal.
Okay, Alicia, starting with you.
I affirm the proposal.
Paul,
I affirm.
D'Angelo,
I affirm.
Ranfis,
Affirm.
Faith,
I affirm.
Robin,
Affirm.
Megan,
Affirm.
Maria,
I affirm the proposal.
Michael.
I affirm the proposal.
All right. We got work to do. Thank you. Okay.
All right, so Sam, that now takes us to the community committee subcommittees and work group liaisons.
All right. This is other work that we've got for you all. One, we've done our recruitment for equitable tree canopy, and so just maybe starting bottom to top, we do need a committee member to serve as a member of the equitable tree canopy work group. I'll remind folks that this work group also has a member of the Urban Forestry Commission on there, alongside other seats related to community stakeholders that are engaged in actively participating and working on supporting and building out our urban canopy. And so we need a committee member to participate there, but it's a new body, and so I think that work is still to be defined, but we do expect them to meet every other month. And then there's Strategic Program 15. This is focused on our federal climate and equity funding opportunities. We need a committee member there. And then we need at least 2 committee members for our recruitment subcommittee. And I think we can just go down the list and see whether we've got committee members interested in each of those. And maybe if we can, maybe Trace, I'd actually just encourage you to call it and start with the bottom. I know I've heard interest, but maybe we just formally express interest. And with the work groups, we don't need to vote on them, but with the recruitment subcommittee, we do, since that is a subcommittee of the full committee.
So Sam, you would just like to ask for committee volunteers for Strategic Program 8, Equitable Tree Canopy, is that correct?
Correct, and then 15.
Okay, and then strategic program 15, federal climate and equity funding opportunities. So again, looking for committee members to be on these one. You're looking for one of two, Sam, or is it a 2 of 2 deal?
Just one person for each of them.
Okay, all right. Faith, I see your hand.
I would be happy to sit on the strategic program 15 committee.
All right. Any volunteers for program 8, equitable tree canopy? Maria, your hand is raised. Is that for program 8?
Yeah, I have some capacity to serve for program 8, and I think it aligns well with transportation.
All right. Sam, there's your 2.
We got them. Okay, thank you. Then I think the next thing is then we just need 2 members for the recruitment subcommittee. We expect this is limited in time in the sense that it'll probably be about 3 to 4 meetings, possibly some interviews to review about 20 applications, and then ultimately making the recommendation to the full committee. So 2 members, but we'll take more. And this one, because it is subcommittee, it's a subcommittee that's going to make a recommendation to the full committee. We do need you all to make someone to propose that 2 people are on there, and then the committee to agree to that.
I see Ramphis and Paul, their hands are raised. So Ramphis, I'll confirm that you're volunteering for the recruitment subcommittee.
Yes, have capacity. Also happy to create any space if there are any other committee members, but yeah.
And Paul, confirming with you as well.
That's correct. Can you refresh me on the timeline just so I know?
Yeah, we will have about 4 meetings here over the coming, probably starting, we'll reach out to you all and aim, but probably starting the 2nd week of April, where we'll send the applications to you all, have about probably 3 to 4 meetings where you discuss the applicants. And then I suspect you may want to do some interviews with a handful of the applicants, and we'll come back to a full committee and you all will make a recommendation. So that 3 to 4 meetings is going to take place between mid-April and probably towards mid-May.
Sounds good.
About hour-long, 1 hour meetings during the daytime.
Maria, your hand is raised. Are you volunteering as well?
I could volunteer. I know Ramphis, Robin, and I were part of the last round of subcommittee for recruitment. Do you need 3? I just can't remember with all the scheduling what works best for scoring and vetting, but I can join again. I think that would make that my 3rd time on the recruitment subcommittee, but I can make space like Ramphis said.
Yeah, we need at least 2. So 3 is perfectly fine, but we need at minimum 2.
Okay, if scheduling works out, I'm happy to be a 3rd, but you can certainly do it with 2. But just let me know as you start doodling our availability.
Megan?
Sam, clarification question. Am I on the strategic or the tree canopy one or not? Because I just don't, I'm just to be aware of what time
So Megan, no, now we've got Maria on the tree canopy.
I heard that. I'm not mad, but I thought I was on it.
No, I think we were teasing out interest to know that folks were interested prior to heading into the meeting, and so we do only want one. I mean, we're still working through teasing out and setting the table and voting members, and particularly having voting members. So we are looking for one individual, though we're happy to plug you in. And if you and Maria want to have that conversation together too, that's fine. But I wanted to make sure that we can come back and that at least as a committee, everyone's on the same page and knows who's showing up to that space.
I see Maria's hand raised, and I'll just say I'm happy either way. I mostly was not volunteering for recruitment. Like I'm just trying to be aware of my time commitments. But Maria, it'd be great. I think you're right. There's overlap with the transportation world, considering.
But I think the confusion here is helpful to kind of work through, because I know there are other strategic programs, and it would be helpful to know, are there expectations for committee members to be on every one of them? When is that recruitment happening? I mean, I particularly have interest in climate friendly schools. So happy to jump off tree canopy, but I know I have a little bit more time right now as I'm switching jobs. But feel free, Megan, to jump back into that because I know you were instrumental in the CIP process.
Yeah, Sam, can you
We will-
illuminate, are there going to be other needs for work groups?
It's the two really explicit ones, and particularly ones we need now, are equitable tree canopy, the federal funding match work group that was strategic program 15, in part because we folks are ready to go there, and then the recruitment subcommittee, so we can continue to continue our work to make sure Michael can have his evenings back. So those are the three we're focused on near term. Eventually, we'll come back to the transportation decarbonization work group, and that's a conversation. I know we've checked in with Alicia. Alicia, has expressed interest there, given alignment with her work with ODOT. Alicia, tell me if that's correct. And then other work that exists is certainly to be on grant RFP review panels, and I know that we've got at least one committee member here on that. We've got our contract review panels. Those will come and go, and so those will be opportunities where we'll reach out and be ad hoc at a point in time where we'll say, hey, we've got this RFP, we'd like you to be on the review panel. And then we will need, this is going to be a little bit further out, we will need liaisons for the annual review of the Bureau progress reports. So I'd say this is going to be, so this is not near term, this is once those projects get going and we're coming to the 1 year, we will need liaisons as part of that review so that we've got that committee connection to bring that information back and have that discussion back with you all. So that's not now, but that will be the case in the future. I think, Maria, in terms of the climate-friendly schools, that's a conversation we're more than happy as staff to follow up with you and connect with you and talk about those opportunities, although there wasn't an explicit, per se, work group that we had, a role that we had identified there. So that's one that I think as staff, we're more than happy to provide you a briefing, have that conversation and check in, but there's not an explicit role there.
And the mighty reporting and metrics subcommittee that I am on, I'm sure we'll meet again at some point.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, if Maria's game, I'm happy to have Maria be on the equitable tree canopy work group.
Sure, for sure.
Okay. I think then the question maybe is just going to be the recruitment subcommittee. We've got Paul and Ramses and essentially Maria as a possible third. But I think if you all want to just make a proposal that the three of them, recognizing that Maria, you may bow out if your schedule doesn't work, but at least creating a subcommittee with the three of them would be the next move, and just for the committee to approve that. So just a proposal for the three of them to be part of the recruitment subcommittee, and then the committee, and we can just, I don't know that we need to do a temperature check. I think we can just go around and see whether committee members affirm that.
All right, so we need a committee member to make a proposal that Maria, we have three. So we had Maria, Paul, and Ramses on the recruitment subcommittee. If someone would, Megan, your hand is up. Are you making the proposal?
Yes, I shall propose that, what you just said.
A second, please.
I'll second that.
Thank you, D'Angelo. All right, well, now I'll go around and just affirm and get everyone's feedback. Megan?
I affirm.
Maria?
Affirm.
Paul?
Affirm.
Ramses?
Part of the motion, so I suppose I affirm.
D'Angelo?
I affirm.
Alicia?
I affirm.
Robin?
Affirm.
Faith?
I affirm.
Michael?
I affirm.
All right, that proposal has passed.
Okay. All right.
All right,
we've got
Sam.
about-
Oh, go ahead, Sam.
Nope, you have it. I think you were going there.
All right,
Over to
we'll
you,
now
Tracy.
move to the last agenda item, discuss the potential committee process to provide code update recommendations.
Yeah, I'll take this one. So as everyone probably understands and reads the newspaper, we've heard potential conversations about potential ballot initiatives or changing the charter. I'm not here to advocate for us to one way or another, but city code is pretty clear. City code suggests that we as a committee may offer code recommendations to council. And I think for any form of good governance and good thoughtful process, it's important that we as a committee, when we feel the urgency and when we feel the timeliness, that we, as part of the process of improving PCEF, that we as a committee should provide a voice when that feels timely and urgent, what those code changes could look like. We are on the front lines on implementing these programs. We interface with staff. We hear the challenges. We are all volunteers. We volunteer for some of these subcommittees. We talk a lot about some of the problems, the inefficiencies, the areas for improvement, the areas for collaboration that could be strengthened. So I want to recognize that we're not just lame ducks. We have an experience and we have voices, and how we articulate those voices. That's a gray area in legislation. So I think I have no real outcome today or a vote lined up for us. I think strictly this aspect of this slide and this portion of the agenda is really just to get a temperature check with folks. Should we discuss what a process could look like for us as a committee to provide those recommendations to council or future iterations of council, especially as we transition to new form of government, how we make those recommendations. So I just wanted to pause there and just recognize that. I just wanted to make sure that any way we move forward, we're just clear-eyed and not assume that the offices will reach out to us or engage with us, but that we flex the muscle within the city code provision to have our process of how we inform council. Again, whether this form of government or the future one after November or after next year. I'll pause there. See if folks had any thoughts or responses, but I think it's just really more of a top level. Should we have a conversation about this? Should we explore this in future meetings?
Michael.
On that, I would suggest starting in small group meetings and then kind of bringing that together and then having a public discussion about it.
Thanks, Michael.
Paul?
I think that's an excellent suggestion, the small group meetings. What is the anticipated timeline from beginning to end to enter into a code change process? Does it take a year, 6 months?
I'm going to take a first stab at this and I'll check in with Sam here, fact check me here. I think there's different timelines if you're seeking a code change, whether it's via a ballot initiative. So that's its own timeline. There's a code change within council, which I imagine we can't unilaterally make a code change. That would have to be via this current model, via a commissioner. In the next iteration, I imagine it would be through the new form of council. I'll pause there. Sam, I don't know if you want to riff more here on timelines, but I don't think there's anything really laid out in our code for timelines for code changes within specifically around the PCEF code.
No. Here, can you all hear me? I'm not sure. Okay. There's no timeline. It's a really question of just how robust a process you all would want to run, what your objectives are on the other side of getting there, and who you need to be talking to, and the kind of research you need. And fundamentally, I think this is clearly the theme that I'm trying to impart, is just the staff support that any code change process and conversations that revolving around a code change would need. Right there's you can run a light one that may need less staff support, and it really functions around scheduling and Zoom meetings, et cetera. or you could run something more robust, which would need that. But so the timeline, it really is about just the process you'd want to run to get there, and what that kind of how much time you need to afford for that process. And that's acknowledging a code change where you run a process, you come up with ultimately the language and the changes you want to make, and then you would essentially send it to council, and then the mayor would put it on the agenda for discussion. That'd be the avenue for a code change to council. Then the mayor would put it on the agenda, they'd discuss, and they'd figure out how they want to take it up. But that'd be the move.
Faith?
I have to admit that when I saw this discussion item, I was stuck in the thinking about how are we responding to potential code changes others are proposing, which I think we also would like to have an internal process about how we're going to respond to what we hear. So that's what's top of mind. I have to say that I'm very influenced by the newspaper, apparently. But the way in which Sam just responded made me realize that could also be the proactive approach that we've already taken, actually, as a committee and as staff to make code changes in the past. And were you thinking about both of those things, or were you thinking more, Ranfis, when you added this to the agenda? Is it a process to go through and say, regardless of what comes out of other offices, other commissioner offices, we're thinking we might want to make code changes?
I think it's a hybrid of that. I think it's one, recognition, hey, there are proposals being discussed, and those proposals have never engaged or proactively engaged us. So I think that's one. Two, I think any sort of sound approach for process, or a thoughtful approach around process, would take its time, would engage, community. Like I think I've seen how we've historically approached process in the past. I think generally it's community centric. We try to engage community members. We can set our own bar of how we would do that and approach that. So I think that's more, I think conversation of not just responding, not just being centered to the moment, recognizing that we're in a moment, but taking the long view as well. Like, hey, this might not be the first or the last time. We need to have a sound approach around how setting the expectation. How do we want to be engaged? How would we engage? And who do we want to be engaged with in that process? I hope that makes sense. I think the timeliness. I think when we first started this program, and when we first joined this committee, like it was such in the infancy of the program. Obviously, we've gone through one round of code changes already, but I think it is clear. Like I think as we hear different rumors or different thinkings about code changes, like at a certain stage, I think it becomes really important for us as a committee to sort of send our own signal. Hey, like here's how we would want to be engaged. Hey, here's what would be our process for internally making our recommendations. So I think it's really giving more life to what's in code. And unfortunately, I think the current moment has sort of really created more of an urgency for us, I think, to discuss this sooner than later.
Any other comments from committee members? Paul?
Oh, I just want to follow up through with this somehow and have the small group conversations. And Sam, if you could help us arrange that, that would be great. Thank you.
Will do.
Thanks, Paul. And I know we're running out of time. Appreciate the conversation so far. I think I appreciate that recommendation to take this to the small group, and hopefully this is just, again, the beginning of a conversation. Again, no expected outcome today, but I think appreciate everyone's feedback and questions, and I think the recommendation to take this to small group. So I don't have anything else unless other folks want to chime in.
All right, Ramfis, I don't see any additional questions or comments coming from committee members related to this item. Sam, before I conclude the meeting, do you have any final comments? Oh, Megan, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I mean, just before final comments, I guess I just wanted to give an update too about something Ramfis and I have been working on a little behind the scenes, which is that, you know, there's, as Faith pointed out, and you have noticed in the robust list of media articles that Sam sent us, PCEF has been in a lot of news lately, and sometimes and opinion pieces, and many of them with factually untrue statements and or calling for ways of use of PCEF funds that we don't think the committee agrees with. We think the PCEF funds should be used for PCEF purposes, like our conversation tonight. So Ramfis and I have been working on an opinion piece, an op-ed for the Oregonian, and we have it pretty drafted, and I mainly am just kind of letting you all know if you have enthusiasm to like chime in on it or see our words, you can contact me, but we are trying to get it out. We were waiting for the meeting tonight so that we had a decision to comment on in the op-ed. We're trying to get it out next week, and hopefully we'll get published as our kind of public response. We haven't as co-chairs done much of that in the past, but we feel the time is a bit right now, given kind of all the attention on PCEF and the threats from various commissioners at the moment. So that's just a little heads up. If you have interest in being involved in it, contact me like ASAP. Or if you have questions, you can ask now, I suppose.
Does anyone have questions or comments for Megan?
Thank you for being so proactive. I appreciate this very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. And, you know, hopefully it gets published. We don't have a lot of control over that, but we will send it a few places and have some warm leads. So we'll see.
All right, Sam, moving it to you for final comments.
Yeah, no, thank you all. Couple decisions, appreciate it. We've got work ahead of us. I hope those that are taking spring break next week enjoy spring break off. And otherwise, have a wonderful evening, folks. Thank you.
Good night, everyone, and thank you for joining, and thank all of you as well who provided public comment. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everybody. Happy spring.
Thanks all. Good night.
Good night.